I'm Dane Rose, Chairman of Happiness Data, and welcome to this episode of 10x Nonprofit. What I want to define in this episode are my thoughts on best practices or 10x thinking in the arena of a best practice. A best practice is anything that returns a higher quantity of sustainable well-being per unit of energy invested. So in the optimal, perfect extreme of this example, it would take absolutely no energy whatsoever with the perfect design to create complete and total sustainable well-being for all of humanity. Now, coming more into the realm of reality, a best practice is something that delivers 10 times more sustainable well-being than any practice to date. So if the status quo takes $10 and 2 hours and one tree and 200 gallons of gas to deliver 5 units of sustainable human well-being, then a best practice or a 10x practice would take 10 times less energy to create the same well-being, or the same amount of energy to create 10 times more well-being. And if we look at this construct of a 10x paradigm of a best practice, the most important component is breaking down the data, is actually correlating for any given protocol that's in the status quo. How many man-hours does it take? Human hours. How many units of energy? How much money? How much training? And what is the outcome? So the first thing is to measure both energy invested and well-being generated. The second thing is to measure things like scalability and consistency. How reliable is the equation? Does it just work in this country, or does it work all over the place? Now that we have a baseline, the next step is to analyze each step of the way, each step of the process of the investment, each outcome, and to hypothesize ways in which energy could be reduced and well-being could be maximized. The next step is to test and do a comparison study to create a model and demonstrate it. If it can be demonstrated at least once, then we can start working on, again, stabilizing it so that it's delivering a consistent result. So this is the essence of a scientific approach for transmuting energy into sustainable human well-being. And this is the core function of any nonprofit. Whether it's ecological, whether it's, preserving a certain species, whether it's advancing women's education, whether it's increasing women's rights in certain countries, whether it is protecting the ozone layer. It all boils down to a hypothesis that contributing time, money, and natural resources towards that objective will result in a certain amount of human well-being over time. And so that needs to be clearly in focus and measured, not just as a dogma that this should happen, but the estimated amount of human well-being generated when it does happen, and how that fits into the ecological connection. If it's saving rhinoceroses in a certain country, how does saving rhinoceroses in a certain country integrate ecologically into the economy of that country, into the ecology of that country, into the way that country then connects with other parts of the world to be relevant to human well-being? Is it as simple as the fact that 10% of the global population will have a 10-second unit of pleasure, saying, oh, great, I'm glad there's rhinoceroses somewhere in the world to think about and write stories about? Or is it integrated into not only that, but part of, is there some economic benefit? Is there an ecological benefit? What is the equation? And this brings to a next level, which I'll explore in another video, but is the focus of a given nonprofit potently positioned to dramatically improve human well-being, i.e., rhinoceroses or the ozone layer? The ozone layer, of course, affects all human beings' health and all animals' health. The rhinoceroses, affect a much smaller portion of the Earth's ecology. On this basis, if $100,000 was capable of making a 1% improvement in the ozone layer, or a 1% improvement in the well-being of rhinoceroses, the ozone layer, if the mathematical equations are done in this formula of maximizing sustainable human well-being, is going to register higher, because it will include, that means it's 1% better for rhinoceroses as well. But if nothing is done on the ozone layer and the rhinoceroses are saved from poaching, at some point in ozone deterioration, the rhinoceroses might die anyway. And so there's a hierarchy of global priorities. And thank you for watching.